A recorded version of this webinar will be available at a later date along with the PowerPoint slides. During the presentation, all lines will be muted. However, we would love to hear from you. You may use the chat box if you're experiencing technical difficulties, or the Q&A box if you have questions during the presentation. If time permits, the presenter will respond to questions at the end of the session. Otherwise, answers to questions will be provided and posted with the webinar. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce today's presenter, Michael Dalto. Michael works as a consultant with Griffin Hammonds Associates, a nationally known firm that supports systems change to improve employment and small business outcomes for people with disabilities. He also serves as a subject matter expert for the Employment First State Leadership Mentoring Program. Michael has delivered training and technical assistance on disability benefits and related work incentives for 30 years. This includes creating a state benefits planning certification in Maryland and developing curriculum for Virginia Commonwealth University's National Certification for Benefits Planners. Michael, we are honored to have you with us today and look forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Bianca, and thank you to everyone who's participating today. As you can tell from the title slide, I decided to go with the subtle approach here, but there's a reason for that. If you're involved in providing employment services to people with disabilities who get benefits from Social Security, either SSDI or SSI, and you're not using the ticket to work, you are literally leaving money on the table. So I hope that you'll leave today's presentation with an understanding of why and how you can benefit from the Ticket to Work as an employment service provider. Now, the Ticket to Work, which was created by the Ticket to Work Ticket to Work and Work Incentives Improvement Act of 1999, was originally designed as a sort of voucher system to give people with disabilities who get disability benefits from Social Security a way to receive employment supports, partly that would provide competition for state vocational rehabilitation agencies. It didn't quite function exactly as envisioned, in my opinion, but it is still a powerful tool that can be used to provide employment supports to people to assist them in moving toward greater self-sufficiency, less dependence on disability benefits from Social Security, and, as will be a large focus of today's session, to provide supplemental funding to employment service providers. So if you want 3 good reasons to use the Ticket to Work, I'll give you 10. The first reason is maybe the most important. You can get ticket payments for people that you're fully funded to serve through other sources. This is not double dipping. In other words, you can be fully funded from other sources to provide supported employment or other employment services to a person who receives disability benefits from Social Security. And if that person's Ticket to Work is assigned to your agency and that person meets certain earnings milestones, then you can get Ticket to Work payments in addition to the full funding. It provides a bonus. Secondly, you can limit the individuals from whom you accept Ticket to Work assignments to people who are already working at a level that would enable you to get paid. You as a Ticket to Work provider, that's known as an employment network. So you can say, well, we're only going to accept the Ticket to Work from people that we already currently serve, and furthermore, people who are already working at levels that will enable us to get ticket payments, so that you essentially have no risk of losing money and can only gain money. Secondly, you can receive Ticket to Work payments for people you serve through a Medicaid Home and Community-Based Services waiver program. This was a big question maybe 12 years ago, and many individual agencies were concerned that if they were serving a person with funding through a Medicaid waiver program, providing, for example, supported employment, they could not also receive payments through the Ticket to Work. But luckily, in 2009, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services issued a written statement that said that it's not double dipping, that you can be funded to provide employment supports through the Medicaid waiver for an individual, and you can receive Ticket to Work payments for the same person. The reason is, while the Medicaid waiver program provides reimbursement for services provided, the Ticket to Work does not. The Ticket to Work is providing payments to service providers based on individuals reaching certain earnings levels. The Ticket to Work payments are not reimbursement for services. So you can be fully funded through a Medicaid waiver and get Ticket to Work payments for the same person, and it's not double dipping. Now, some Ticket to Work payments could be referred to as low-hanging fruit. They provide pretty substantial revenue, and a person doesn't need to be earning all that much to qualify you for them. So the first phase of Ticket to Work payments are known as Phase 1 milestone payments. And you can only receive those if you're serving someone who has not had a successful closure with MVR or has not received services from MVR. If a person had a successful closure with Missouri Vocational Rehabilitation, in other words, if their case was closed because they were employed, then you wouldn't be able to get the Phase 1 milestone payment. So this does rule out a substantial number of people. But nonetheless, I imagine many of you may be serving people who have either never received services for MVR or did not have successful closures. They can qualify for the Phase 1 milestone payments. And for an individual to qualify the service provider for those Phase 1 milestone payments, she or he only needs to be earning $880 a month in gross wages this year. Now, the Phase 1 milestone payments issue up to 4 payments, each one totaling $1,442. So if you get all 4 of them, then you'll receive $5,768 in 2019. To oversimplify, let's say that you worked with somebody who worked 9 straight months, earning at least $880 a month. You, the employment service provider, would then be able to get all 4 of those Phase 1 milestone payments, and you'd have over $5,700. And once again, you could be fully funded through other sources to provide employment supports to that person, and still you'd get the Phase 1 milestone payments. Now, if a person doesn't earn enough to qualify you for the Phase 1 milestone payments right away, but they do later, you, the employment service provider, can still get those payments. If the person never has earnings high enough to qualify you for the Phase 1 milestone payments, let's say they started a job, they were on pace to earn at least $880 a month, but then they stopped or their earnings dropped below that threshold, then you wouldn't get payments, but you also wouldn't lose anything, particularly if you were fully funded through other sources to provide employment supports to that person. Second, or actually this is the fourth reason, you can get paid much more for individuals who earn more. These are the Phase 2 milestone payments that you can receive if an individual earns at least $1,220 a month gross wages, or if they're blind, they'd have to be earning at least $2,040 a month gross wages. And the Phase 2 milestone payments pay a different dollar amount per month depending on whether the individual receives SSDI or SSI. If the person gets SSDI, or if they get both SSDI and SSI at the same time, then your agency can receive $432 a month for up to 11 months if the person earns at least $1,220 a month if they're not blind, or at least $2,040 a month if they are blind. That's a total of over $4,700 if you get all 11 payments. For people who receive SSI, the monthly benefit is only $247 a month, but you can get more of these payments. Rather than only 11 possible total payments, you could get payments for up to 18 months for people who get only SSI, and that would total over $4,400. These payments are available either for people who've completed the Phase 1 milestone payments and are earning enough, or for people who did not qualify for the Phase 1 milestone payments because they had successful closures with MVR, but who were earning at least $1,220 a month or $2,040 a month if they're blind. Finally, after the Phase 2 milestone payments come the outcome payments. These are payments that the employment network, the Ticket to Work service provider, receives only if the individual is earning enough to stop the cash benefits they get for either SSDI or SSI. Now, the monthly payments that the service provider can get through these outcome payments are the same dollar amount as for the Phase 2 milestone payments, $432 a month for individuals who get SSDI and $247 a month for people who get only SSI. But there are potentially a lot more of these payments available, up to 36 months of payments for people on SSDI and up to 60 months of payments for people who get only SSI, which means if you get all of the possible outcome payments, you'd be getting well over $15,000 for people you serve who get SSDI and well over $14,000 for people you serve who get only SSI. Now, let's say that you work with an individual who qualifies your agency for all of these payments. They qualify you for all of the Phase 1 milestone payments, all the Phase 2 milestone payments, and all of the outcome payments. The total revenue to your agency would be over $26,000 for people who get SSDI and over $25,000 for people who receive SSI. So this of course would be paid over a period of a handful of years, but nonetheless, it's significant money. It's a nice bonus if added to other funds that you're receiving from other funding sources. And even if only a fraction of people whose Ticket to Work is assigned to your agency reach these earnings levels and qualify you for these payments, it can still be well worth the effort to get that kind of revenue. Now, the fifth reason to participate in the Ticket to Work is that some people can enjoy protection through safety nets known as work incentives that can help protect benefits while they're working, even when they're earning enough to qualify your agency for the Phase 1 and the Phase 2 milestone payments. For example, and I apologize for not going into a lot of detail about this. Some of you already have background on these work incentives, but I'll just kind of offer some summaries. Suppose you're working with somebody who gets SSDI and is earning over $1,220 a month gross wages, or over $2,040 a month gross wages if they're blind. Now, ordinarily, that level of earnings could be considered by Social Security to be what they call substantial gainful activity, or SGA. However, if that individual is paying for disability-related expenses out of pocket that are needed at least partly to be able to work, or if they're receiving job coaching or extra help from someone on their job, a coworker or supervisor, or if they're paid the full wage for their job, but they're working at a reduced rate of productivity, working more slowly than coworkers, or there's certain duties that they can't fully perform because of their disability, then they can benefit from subtractions from their earnings that would enable them to earn more than $1,220 a month if they're not blind, or $2,040 a month if they are blind, to still be considered to not be doing substantial gainful activity and still keep their SSDI benefits. In other words, a person can, under the right circumstances, and it's quite common, can be earning enough for your agency to get the Phase 2 milestone payments, but at the same time, the person can use these work incentives to keep their SSDI. Now, if a person on SSDI benefits does have their SSDI stopped due to work, they don't have enough subtractions to keep their earnings below that substantial gainful activity level, they can usually get those benefits back again later if anything happens to their job without having to reapply pretty quickly and easily if their earnings have dropped within 3 years after their trial work period. And there is an additional safety net that can enable them to get benefits back without a full reapplication if they lose their job or their earnings drop even more than 3 years after they've finished their trial work period. Now, people who receive SSI, as their earnings go up, see their SSI reduced, although not dollar for dollar. A person on SSI who works always has more money because their SSI is reduced by less than half of their earnings. So they always come out ahead financially. Suppose that person earns enough to reduce her SSI payment to 0. There's a terrific double safety net that lets her remain eligible for SSI in that situation. She can then do 2 things. One, keep her Medicaid, also known as Mo Health Net, even though her SSI has been reduced to 0 by her earnings. And it enables her to get her SSI back at any time that her earnings drop low enough where she stops working later. And there's no time limit to this safety net. So there's some great safety nets that can help people, encourage people to work at levels or continue working at levels that can let your agency get those ticket to work payments and still protect cash and medical benefits that they receive. Now, the thing that I enjoy most about the Ticket to Work is that it can be a powerful funding source for benefits planning. This is important because usually when people are working at those levels that would qualify a service provider for particularly the phase 2 milestone payments and the outcome payments, the person's earnings could potentially have an impact at least on their cash benefits, generally not their medical benefits. And at that point, usually people need fairly intensive benefits planning to show them what the safety nets, what the work incentives are available to them, to make sure that they still come out ahead, to let them know that if they work their way off cash benefits, they can get them back quickly and easily if they later have their earnings drop or stop, and they can keep their medical benefits the entire time, even if they've worked their way off the cash benefits. So benefits planning can encourage people to continue working at those levels that would enable the service provider to get Ticket to Work payments, because the individual can see what their options are and make a truly informed choice, rather than panicking because of myths or rumors they've heard and quitting their jobs. Now, suppose your agency works with an individual who had a successful closure with MVR. Let's say that the person went through the MVR process, they ended up with a job, and after finishing, having your case closed with MVR, which typically happens about 3 months after the person has gone to work, then the individual considers assigning their Ticket to Work to your agency. Well, first of all, VR would be very eager to refer people in that situation to your agency, especially if you are participating in the Ticket to Work, and particularly if you might be willing to provide benefits planning to that individual. And here's why. Because when you win, MVR wins as well financially. Now, we've talked about the levels of earnings a person needs to have for your agency to qualify for the Ticket to Work payments, the various milestone payments and the outcome payments. But suppose you work with an individual and they continue to work at the substantial gainful activity, or SGA level, for 9 consecutive months. Well, your agency would be able to get those Ticket to Work payments based on that level of earnings, and MVR would be able to bill Social Security for all the costs that they incurred through that person's vocational rehabilitation, including an additional overhead cost based on how many months the person's case was open with MVR. So if you are providing services through the Ticket to Work, you're providing benefits planning to explain to people why they can be better off working at those levels that would qualify you for ticket payments, your agency can get Ticket to Work payments, and once the person has worked 9 months at that substantial gainful activity level, at that point, MVR can bill Social Security for everything they spent on that person's rehab costs when their case was open, even if it's been several years since their case was closed. So we said before that individuals who are already earning above that substantial gainful activity level can qualify an employment network, an agency participating in the Ticket to Work, for those phase 2 milestone payments, even if the person is using work incentives to show that despite earnings of $1,220 a month if they're not blind, or $2,040 a month if they are blind, that they're not doing substantial gainful activity and they can still keep their SSDI payments. The seventh reason for you to participate in the Ticket to Work is they can provide a protection for individuals who assign their Ticket to Work to your agency and who are meeting certain timely progress requirements. If a person has assigned their Ticket to Work either to MVR or to your agency, if you're an employment network, and they're meeting either certain earnings goals or certain educational milestones, and they're considered to be meeting the timely progress requirements that Social Security has established, then that person will be exempt from medical reviews. You see, when a person first applies for SSDI or SSI, the burden of proof is on them to show that they meet Social Security's medical criteria for disability. However, after they've been approved, periodically, usually once every 1 to 7 years, depending on how likely it is the person's disability will improve, Social Security does a medical review to make sure that the person's disability has not gotten better. If they do a medical review and they find the person has medically improved, then all bets are off. With a particular exception, the person would lose all of their cash and medical benefits. However, if they have assigned their Ticket to Work to your agency or to MVR, and they're meeting the timely progress requirements, then they will not get medical reviews even if it's time for them to receive one. They're exempt from the medical reviews. And that means that Social Security can't determine that they've medically improved, even if they have. Now, it's very likely that people that you're serving would extraordinarily rarely be determined to be medically improved through one of these medical reviews. But nonetheless, it's still nerve-wracking and very frightening for people to go through the medical reviews because they understand that their continuing benefits can be on the line. Now, I'm not going to give you details about the specific timely progress requirements, but there is a link on this slide that you can go to see what they are. The amount of earnings a person needs to receive, the number of months in a year they need to receive them to meet the timely progress requirements, increases each year. They raise the bar each year of the ticket assignment, and the educational achievement milestones that would constitute timely progress get more demanding each year as well. But a person who has assigned their ticket and is meeting the timely progress requirements does not have to worry about those medical reviews. The 8th of 10 reasons that you should consider participating in the Ticket to Work is that there's no conflict with MVR. This is a dramatic improvement from the original old ticket rules, which were in effect from 2001 until July of 2008. They were poorly designed, and they set state voc rehab agencies in competition with other employment service providers participating in the Ticket to Work, known as employment networks. This and a number of other problems with the old rules gave lots of service providers who initially participated in the Ticket to Work a bad taste in their mouths and discouraged many from continuing to participate in the Ticket to Work. And the bad reputation that the Ticket to Work justifiably earned in its first roughly 7 years, I think discouraged lots of providers from participating even to this day. But the rules changed much for the better slightly over 11 years ago. And the new rules set up the possibility of a real partnership between state vocational rehabilitation agencies like MVR and generally private service providers who would provide employment supports to people after their cases with VR had been closed. And on the previous slide, I highlighted to you why the Ticket to Work can be a win-win proposition for the state VR agency and the employment network. Because after the VR case is closed, if an employment network is helping a person earn at least $1,220 a month, or at least $2,040 a month if they're blind, for 9 consecutive months, not only does the employment network get the ticket payments, but at the end of the 9 months, MVR can bill Social Security for everything they spent on that person's rehabilitation while their case was open. A quick reminder though, if a person's case has been successfully closed with VR, if their case was closed because they were employed, the employment network that would serve them afterwards can get the Phase 2 milestone payments and the outcome payments, but not the Phase 1 milestone payments. Reason number 9 is that the administrative tasks are limited. They include a contract for an employment network to sign. That's essentially an agreement with Social Security. There is a ticket assignment request when an individual wants to assign his or her ticket to your agency. There's a request form for that. There's an individual work plan that outlines the person's vocational goal, the services and supports they need, their work history, terms and conditions. Now, Social Security does provide a template that you can use, but if your agency already has a form or a plan that includes most or all of this information, you can use your own form and you can just modify it slightly if it doesn't include anything that the individual work plan needs to include. You can just add a couple of items to it. There's a payment request form that an employment network uses when a person has reached the earnings levels that would qualify the employment network for payments. There's an employment network services certification statement. This is a 3-page form that only needs to be used when you're requesting 4 particular payments for an individual. That's 4 months of payments. But remember, the total number of payments can be quite many. It can be for a period of several years. There's a timely progress review form if a person you're serving would like to be exempt from those medical reviews. The employment network needs to certify that they're meeting the timely progress requirements. There's a form for that. However, you can get some help to make the administrative tasks even easier. First off, there is something called an auto pay option. If you're serving an individual and you're not using auto pay, when you request ticket payments, you have to provide some verification of the individual's earnings. It makes sense. You'd have to prove that they're earning enough for you, the employment network, to get those ticket payments. However, if you choose the auto pay option, you don't have to provide any verification of a person's earnings. You don't have to get copies of their pay stubs, or anything like that. You just go ahead and wait. Social Security's contractor checks the IRS records to verify a person's earnings and determines when they've earned enough for you, the employment network, to get those payments. And then you'll get the payments. You have to wait longer to get them. That's the downside to auto pay, but it's less work administratively on your part. Now, in recent years, Social Security implemented an online employment network portal that makes the administrative tasks far easier. And the 10th reason that you should consider participating in the Ticket to Work is that you can partner with an existing employment network and limit the administrative tasks even that much more. There are agencies that have already established themselves as employment networks with Social Security's contractor that are willing to partner with other employment service providers that don't want to have to go through the trouble of becoming an employment network and handling all of the administrative tasks involved in being an employment network. So in other words, they would be the employment network of record. The person that you're serving would assign their ticket technically to this administrative employment network, but you would be providing the services, the employment supports. When that person works at a level that qualifies the employment network for ticket payments, the typical division of payments is that the administrative employment network usually gets 20% of the ticket payments, and you, the employment service provider, get 80%. And many employment service providers find that this is a very good arrangement for them. It frees them up from the great majority of the administrative tasks for employment networks, and they still get 80% of the revenue from the ticket payments they help generate. So if your agency would like to become an employment network and handle the administrative tasks on your own, you can contact Shiv Gassesi at Maximus, that's Social Security's contractor that handles Ticket to Work operations, and Shiv's phone number and email address are on this slide. If you would prefer to partner with an administrative employment network so that they do most of the administrative tasks, you don't have to become an employment network, and you still get 80% of the ticket payments that you help generate, this slide gives two administrative ENs that I've worked with very successfully: Full Circle Employment Solutions and the American Dream Employment Network. And gee, that went very quickly. We have plenty of time for questions.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I just want to remind everyone that's on the line, if you have any questions, please take this moment to type them in the Q&A box, and we'll get responses for you.
While we're waiting for questions, I wanted to mention that I understand a number of you who may be participating today work for state agencies rather than nonprofit employment service providers. And you might be wondering, well, why should you be involved in this call today? I feel that if you can talk up the Ticket to Work and let employment service providers that you interact with know that they are certainly leaving money on the table if they're not participating in the Ticket to Work, and encourage them to check out a recording of this webinar or contact the Maximus program, the contractor to Social Security for Ticket to Work operations. You can be doing a very good deed. Right, and do we have any questions, Bianca? I don't see any on my screen.
Yes, we're getting those ready for you.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'm trying to find the question, sorry. Okay, the first question says employment networks. I think I have two in my area, Choices for People and Impact. VR works closely with both agencies. Do you know if they are employment networks?
I think I would need more information to answer that question. I can tell you that if you go to the Ticket to Work website, actually, or at least a couple of different different ways to get to the site. yourtickettowork.org, I believe, or com, your, Y-O-U-R, tickettowork.org, I believe, is one of the websites. You can search for existing employment networks that provide services in Missouri through that site. I should mention that there are a good number of employment networks that have a national reach and don't necessarily provide significant on-the-ground employment services in all of the states where they are technically operating. But you may want to contact MVR to find out which employment networks they have agreements with. Sometimes there are partnerships known as Partnership Plus agreements, whereby the employment network, the employment service provider, and MVR have an agreement about mutual referrals, about what happens if a person needs services from MVR after their case was closed and they're being served by the employment network, that sort of thing. Those details are hashed out in an agreement, and then MVR is generally eager to refer individuals to those employment networks we have Partnership Plus agreements with after the individual's case is closed or when it's about to close.
Okay, great. Michael, we have a few more questions. This one is an easy one. We have someone that's requesting that you go back to the last two slides so that they can have a few minutes to write down the name and phone numbers.
Certainly. Let me go back to this one. If your agency is interested in becoming an employment network yourself, rather than partnering with an administrative employment network, Schiff Gassesi at Maximus be your contact. And I believe that a recording of this webinar will be available.
Yes.
For anyone afterwards if you miss this, okay? And then the two administrative employment networks that your agency could partner with so that you don't have to become an employment network yourself and you'd be freed up from most of the administrative tasks are these two, Full Circle Employment Solutions and the American Dream Employment Network.
Thank you. And we can just leave that there and we'll go to the next question.
Sure.
It says, appreciate the great information. So we are a developed nonprofit agency that provides employment services. We are not yet VR connected. Can we still access Ticket to Work?
Absolutely. You do not have to have a partnership with MVR in order to be an employment network. If you're not yet connected with MVR, that's not a problem. Now, if you're not connected with MVR and you're serving individuals who are not receiving services from MVR, or individuals who may have received services from MVR in the past but did not have successful closures, did not have their cases closed due to employment, then there's another advantage for your agency, which is that you can qualify for those phase 1 milestone payments. Remember, those are the low-hanging fruit I referred to, where the person only needs to be earning $880 a month. And if they did that for 9 months, you'd be able to get all 4 of the phase 1 milestone payments totaling over $5,700.
Okay, we have a few more questions come in. The next one says, can you please tell me what it takes for a service providing agency that is not currently an employment network to partner with an administrative employment network?
Very good question. You just contact the administrative employment network. You may want to contact both of them, and there may be others as well. I just listed 2 that I've had experience with. Just contact them, explain what your interest is, find out what they're offering. Certainly you'd want to shop around. And once you've made a decision, they can walk you through the process. Although you don't have to become an employment network, the administrative employment network would be serving that function. Staff on your team who would be providing services through the Ticket to Work need to go through security clearances. And that's the most annoying and time-consuming part of partnering with an employment network or becoming one, is the security clearances. Beyond that, the administrative employment network can really just walk you through the entire process. If I were an employment service provider and I wanted to get involved in the Ticket to Work, I would absolutely team up with an administrative employment network, at least at first, to get an idea of what's involved, to find out which tasks you would be handling, which ones they would be handling, to get a sense of how much revenue you'd be generating, make sure that it was worth your while, and then perhaps decide if you wanted to become an independent employment network and handle all of the tasks yourself and get 100% of the ticket revenue rather than 80%. But I think it's a great way to start by working with an administrative employment network, so you're minimizing the administrative tasks you need to handle on the front end. But I do want to repeat a point that I made quite a while ago, which is that you can totally, for lack of a better term, cherry pick when you're deciding whose ticket assignments to accept. You can decide that you only will accept ticket assignments from people that you're already fully funded to support and provide employment services for. That means you can't lose anything, because if you're already fully funded to serve a person, if they don't maintain the earnings levels that lets you get ticket payments, you haven't lost anything. You're still getting full funding for the employment supports you're providing. If some of those individuals, or ideally all of them, whose ticket assignments you accepted do achieve those earnings levels, the ticket payments are a bonus. You get those in addition to the full funding from other sources. And you can limit the ticket assignments you accept not just to people you're fully funded to provide employment supports for, but also those people you're fully funded to serve who are already meeting the earnings requirements that would enable you to get ticket payments. So generally, that means if you're smart about the ticket assignments you accept, you can't help but make money through the ticket to work.
Okay, thank you, Michael. This one's more of a comment instead of a question, but I'll read it. Impact contracted with Life Inc. as an administrative EN. We had limited referrals, maybe 3, and only 1 that went forward with services. So we're going to move over to the chat box because there seems to be a few questions in there. So let's see. The next question would be, does self-withdrawal from Missouri VR count as a successful closure, and would that disqualify an individual as someone who has had a successful closure in the past?
Okay, good question. If a person decides to withdraw from MVR services before they're employed, that would not be considered a successful closure, and another employment network could then serve them and qualify for the phase 1 milestone payments if the person's earning at least $880 a month, and the phase 2 and the outcome payments if they're earning the necessary amounts for those payments. Interesting story. There have historically been a handful of employment networks with a national scope that basically it provided very little in the way of service. Social Security has tightened up rules to prevent that from happening in the future. They're requiring employment networks to provide significant services, particularly job placement, continuing monitoring, and what they refer to as career planning, which is really an overblown use of that term. It's just basically helping a person select an earnings goal, a work goal, and decide what type of work they'd like to pursue. So these employment networks that provided very little service still got a lot of business, because what they did was they would split the ticket revenue that they collected with the individual, the person with a disability who got SSDI or SSI. And at least one of them, I recall, was encouraging people who had cases open with their state VR agencies to drop their cases, to withdraw from services before they became employed, so that the employment network could qualify for those phase 1 milestone payments, which they would split with the individual. I think Social Security raised some eyebrows about that, felt that that may not be entirely ethical, and they tightened up rules. So now employment networks do need to provide significant employment supports. But I imagine most of you on the webinar work for agencies that are already providing those services. Now, I did want to respond to the comment earlier. First of all, thank you for pointing out that Life Incorporated has functioned as an administrative employment network. Those of you not familiar with it, Life Incorporated is a Center for Independent Living. It's actually based in Missouri. The other 2 employment networks listed on the screen currently are not located in Missouri. I'm sorry to hear that your agency only got ticket payments from about 3 individuals. I will say that if you're evaluating whether to become an employment network or partner with an administrative employment network, it is a good idea to start out by looking at the historic earnings of people that you serve who get SSDI or SSI benefits. If there are a substantial number of people who were earning at least $880 a month and have not had successful closures with MVR or have never received MVR services, then there's a good chance you could get a significant amount of money through the phase 1 milestone payments. If you're serving primarily people who did have successful closures with MVR, then you want to look at whether you work with a significant number of people who are earning at least $1,220 a month gross wages if they're not blind, or at least $2,040 a month gross wages if they are blind, to see if you could get a significant amount of revenue through phase 2 milestone payments. If, let's say, you look at the average earnings for people that you're serving and you see they're about $500 a month, and very few people earn even $880 a month, then I would say unless your agency is making great efforts to change that, and you expect to see average earnings increase for people that you serve as a result of your efforts, I would say your agency is probably not a good candidate to be an employment network or partner with an administrative employment network, because the people you're serving just aren't going to earn enough to qualify you for ticket payments. So you do want to look at the earnings levels that you have had historically with people who get SSI or SSDI or both, and the earnings levels that you project going forward for people who get those benefits. So thank you very much for raising that issue.
Okay, great. I just want to remind everybody we still have plenty of time. If you have a question that you want to get answered, go ahead and type that into the question and answer box. The next question is, it's under the chat. Let's see. Oh, here it is. Can an employment network give the client some of the funds that they receive for things like clothes, childcare, etc.?
Absolutely. An employment network is welcome to pay for items, employment-related support items, for individuals they serve. They are also allowed to share in the ticket payments, but there are restrictions on that. The ticket payments that they would share with the individual generally can't be paid in cash to the individual. They have to be provided only for items that would be related to employment. So essentially right along the lines of your question. But yes, ticket revenues can be used to pay for employment needs for individuals.
That's great news. I'm going to take one more look to see if any other questions have come in. Okay, does not look like we have any additional questions.
Okay, well, I have a final comment then, Bianca, if I may. I have pitched the Ticket to Work partly as a funding source for benefits planning services. And I think it's really ideally situated for that purpose. Because if your agency makes a commitment to have someone on your staff or more than one person who gets training and actually has time designated to provide benefits planning to people receiving disability benefits from Social Security and or other sources, you're going to probably substantially increase the employment outcomes for those individuals, because perhaps the greatest disincentive, the greatest hurdle or obstacle to employment for people who get benefits from Social Security or other public benefits, biggest obstacle to employment is fear of losing those benefits when people go to work. If they have benefits planning, particularly if they have it from an agency that they know and trust, they're much more likely to seriously consider employment or increasing their earnings. At the same time, by providing qualified, accurate benefits planning, doing it in a very ethical way so that you're just laying out people's options to them rather than trying to muscle them into earning enough for your employment network or the administrative employment network to get payments, you'll enable people to make a much more informed choice about earnings. Many people can actually be better off financially if they work full-time without cash benefits from Social Security than if they work part-time and keep those cash benefits. And as I alluded to earlier, they have safety nets that can let them get those cash benefits back again quickly and easily if anything happens to their jobs later, and to keep their medical benefits the entire time, even if they work their way off cash benefits indefinitely. So being able to have benefits planners on your staff will certainly increase employment outcomes for people that you serve. More people will work, more people will earn more money, and you'll avoid some of these problems. People quitting jobs for fear of losing benefits, people sabotaging jobs for fear of losing benefits, people refusing to work more than X number of hours per week for fear of losing benefits, or family members or residential programs pulling people out of jobs or sabotaging jobs for fear of benefit loss. So having benefits planners on your staff, if you provide employment services, is a huge help toward improving employment outcomes. At the same time, benefits planning, by providing a truly informed choice to individuals, does encourage more people to work at levels that would let your agency get ticket payments. And if you're limiting the ticket assignments that you accept to only people you're fully funded to serve for employment supports anyway through other sources, and furthermore, among those people, you're only accepting ticket payments for people who are already working at levels that will enable you to get ticket payments, then you'd figure, well, why should this person assign their ticket to us if we're already fully funded to provide employment supports? And the answer is you provide them with something extra. And that something extra can be benefits planning or perhaps more intensive benefits planning if they assign their ticket to your agency or the administrative employment network that you're partnered with. So I do hope that you'll consider partnering with administrative employment networks, possibly becoming an employment network yourself. If you're not an agency that provides employment supports, but you interact with other agencies, please encourage them to view this webinar because chances are if they're not participating in the Ticket to Work now, they are leaving money on the table. And did we have any final questions come in, Bianca?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Okay, this looks like it might be the last question.
Okay.
It says, is there a cost for getting the security clearances for the staff providing services?
I apologize. I don't recall if you have to pay for those security clearances or not. Please forgive me. However, that is a question that you could ask of either of the administrative employment networks or Shiv Gassesi from Maximus. And I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to it myself.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so thank you, Michael, for providing us with all this valuable information about employment networks today. And a big thank you to everyone for joining us. This concludes our webinar. Have a great day.